right, what's going on? How we doing? What is the good word? I guess look at the camera. Look at the camera, right? Because if I look at the screen, it's like I'm looking down. Look at the camera. All right. Today we've got a nice book for you all. Our Presidents. And it's a book about the presidents with poems for each one. So I think we'll start off with maybe, I don't know. Let's do three famous presidents. Three famous presidents. Harem, Hiresh, Elnuk. And one random president. Four poems. Four presidents. Three famous. Let's see. We'll do Abraham Lincoln. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. Ronald Reagan. Say what you want about Ronald Reagan. He's famous. And non-famous, I don't know, William Henry Harrison. Here we go. Who did I say first? Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. He was the president during the Civil War, as I'm sure many of you know. And Abraham Lincoln, he was perhaps the best president of all. Depends on who you ask. Here he is. Honest Abe. Look at Honest Abe. So honest. I don't know about that table, though. All right. Abe Lincoln was a tall man. A lanky 6'4". He had to duck a little when coming through a door, yet never was he known to flee or duck responsibility. Abe Lincoln was a strong man, a wrestler in his youth. He wrestled with his conscience and wrestled with the truth, and won at splitting rails at fairs when other men were splitting hairs. Abe Lincoln was a man's man, yet woman touched his life. His mother, his stepmother, and Mary Todd, his wife. His face was lined, in part, by God, in part, they say, by Mary Todd. They called him Honest Abe and Father Abraham, the great emancipator, gorilla, too, and sham. And whether it was praise or blame, he always took it much the same. Abe Lincoln's sense of humor was such a saving grace. It turned the dark to brightness, transformed his homely face, and brought to people, when he spoke, large wisdom in a little joke. Abe Lincoln was a tall man, a lanky 6'4". He had to duck a little when coming through a door, and strangely everyone he knew, from knowing him, felt taller too. Abe Lincoln. All right, wow. Let's work through that a little bit. You know, there's a few probably expressions, few words that you didn't understand there. That's all right. But there's a theme going on in this poem of using expressions with different meanings, or the same expression with two different meanings. For example, he had to duck a little when coming through a door because he was super tall, and to duck means to duck down. But he also never ducked responsibility. To duck responsibility means like if something tough, a situation arises, if you duck your responsibility, you get out of the way. But Abe Lincoln, he never did that. And then they also use wrestle. He was a wrestler in his youth, a wrestler. W-R-E-S-T-L-E-R. Actually a difficult word to spell, wrestler. Why does it have a W? The T is silent. Go figure. But he also wrestled with his conscience. And your conscience is like that thing in your head that tells you whether to do something, whether to be good, whether to be bad. And he wrestled all the time with his conscience. I mean, imagine being the president during a wartime, even if it's a supposedly just war like the Civil War was, you're still sending thousands and millions of men to die. So he wrestled a lot with his conscience. The Great Emancipator was one of his nicknames because he emancipated the slaves. To emancipate means to free. And they called his famous speech the Emancipation. The Emancipation Proclamation. And last one that we will do in this poem is Saving Grace. Abe Lincoln's sense of humor was such a saving grace. And saving grace is like even when times are tough, there's a saving grace, something good. And he used humor to bring the light when there was darkness. And that's why Abe Lincoln was so beloved, because he helped the people through a tough time, as great leaders always do. That is how a leader becomes great. You know, if you live in a peaceful time, maybe you have all the qualities to become a great leader, but you can't really be a great leader unless you're tested. Oh my God, so good. So good. Who did we say was next? Oh, another great leader. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, World War II. Longest serving president. FDR, I mean, this is sort of a caricature, which is like an exaggeration, but that's pretty much what he looked like. He had like a ridiculously smiley face. Just always. Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. Let us in peace and let us in war. Let us by night and let us by day, and everyone hoped that he knew the way. Squire of Hyde Park, fifth cousin of Teddy, he smiled and waved at each Tom, Dick, and Eddie. He turned on the charm as a Roosevelt can, and he never forgot the forgotten man. My friends, he began in his fireside chats, and his words like malfunction, recalibrate the program. And his words were like hundreds of welcome mats. And each of his listeners, gay or grim, thought FDR was talking to him. Though multitudes loved him, many men hated him. And traitor, that man in the White House, berated him. They deeply distrusted his brain trusts brains, and packing the court gave them shooting pains. They suddenly suffered a sickening feeling whenever they thought of his newest new dealing. And breaking tradition as four-time president, and maybe becoming a permanent resident. Dartos Godashi Angladesh. But he picked up the ball where Herb Hoover had dropped it. He slowed the depression and finally stopped it. He commander-in-chiefed till we won over Hitler, and the Japanese warlords felt littler and littler. He kept us abreast and ahead of the times. He started the march of dimes. He named the four freedoms and brought them to life. He traveled the world, and so did his wife. Thus FDR, with the courage of 10, went his merry way as a leader of men. His cigarette holder, regardless of wrangle, he jauntily tilted at just the right angle. And even Republicans, they had to confess, there was something special about him, I guess. FDR, what a guy. What a guy, what a guy, what a guy. Love him or hate him, he was certainly great. Wow, this video has already taken up 10 gigabytes. All right, you know what? I apologize, but we're going to have to get to Ronald Reagan and who was the random one, William Henry Harrison, tomorrow. And I'll record this on a lower quality. What are we doing here, 4K?